Hey, my friends, what's going on? We're back for another bi-monthly energy reading. And I'm couple days past the new moon, but I knew that I still had to sit down and give my bi-monthly energy reading because that's what I do on this channel. And at the same time, as much as we're a couple days past the Taurus new moon now, there's a lot of other things to think about. We're coming into Gemini season today, and at the same time, we're coming into the energy of the rune Raido, which is the rune for forward movement, traveling, and is a symbol of the chariot of Thor. It's the sun moving across the sky. It's safe travels, which is so quaintly in sync with the fact that we just moved out of Mercury retrograde, right? At the same time, before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's stop and think about how nice this last new moon was. For the fact that it was a new moon in Taurus, coming out of Taurus season, it was a really gentle, loving, wholesome energy. For the end of this really powerful shifting eclipse season that just felt like, holy shit, when am I gonna be done having it rip these shadows out of me, especially considering that all of those eclipses were happening during Pluto retrograde at the same time. So it's the planet of death and rebirth, right? And I don't know about you, but I had some really big things come up. Really big. I was questioning my masculinity. I was being called to look into my relationship with intimacy. It was huge. And so moving on from that, right? We come into Raido and at the same time Gemini season. And these two energies really work in tandem with each other. It's about forward movement, moving out of Mercury retrograde, going direct, and this energy that heralds safe travels. It also calls us to think about who is joining us on this wild journey of life. At the same time, Gemini season is about letting go a little bit, letting go of the goals and the career driven aspirations that the forward charging bull energy of Aries and Taurus might have been driving us to start getting into as we came out of the death and pause of winter into spring. We were starting to think about our vision boards and our what am I going to do for this year kind of energy, right? Gemini comes along and says, hey, let's have fun. And it reminds us to really get into our social lives and enjoy life a little bit. Subsequently, again, we're coming out of that retrograde period. So we're being reminded to just have fun, connect with people again, instead of shying away from making plans. Now, this energy of Gemini season really reminds us to call the people who we haven't talked to in a while, or really think about how that retrograde shook up our relationships. And I mean, we're still going through this retro shade period, right? So we are feeling the effects of Mercury retro shade while coming into Gemini season. So these things play in tandem. And at the same time, the lesson is to really see who has come into our lives, who left, let it all go, and spend the time with the people who choose to be in our lives without pulling people one direction, one way or another. It's about taking the time to work on you and all of the fun, spicy parts of life instead of obsessing about your work and your goals and your visions for this year. And when we do that, it allows us to just stop and be in the moment instead of constantly looking for the outcome. But I'll get to a little bit more of that. Now, as usual, I've still broken this up into a few really big key points to take away. The first one being, look at what is mutually feeding you. If it's not feeding you or fueling your fire, let it go. To let the things that are nourishing you nourish you, and the things that, and the relationships and the things that aren't, let them go. A big part of this is, especially with Gemini season coming about and with Raido, it's like, enjoy the ride and stop carrying the baggage with you from last year or the things that happened over the winter into the journey that is this year. It's about knowing the relationships and the things and the quarrels that have happened in the past that have brought you into this year and not carrying that with you. Part of that is practicing non-suffering. In shamanic practices, non-suffering is the art of stepping away from our experiences and telling this, and being able to talk about the things that happen to you from stepping away from the perspectives of pain. It's also not being attached to your suffering anymore. Knowing that we go through these things so that we can learn the lessons and so that we can sit with it, feel it, and then let it go. And not be holding on to those things, repeating the stories and telling everybody about them again and again and again and again. Number 2, let people place themselves in your life where they're meant to go. Let people align themselves in and out of your life without pulling them or prodding them or begging for them to stay. Don't beg for their attention. Let go of your need for them to stay or go. Just embrace the fact that actions speak louder. And know that they will show you where they're meant to be in your soul's journey. Sometimes people are just meant to be there for a short season or a particular reason, and you're sitting here so attached to the big friendship that you used to have that you're not letting them align themselves out and just be somebody who was there for a few year chapter. And maybe you're even overthinking that and obsessing about it and holding on to them way longer than you needed to. So, take with that what you will. Number 3, embrace the process. This is about being in the moment, embracing the process during the whole thing in itself, instead of being focused on the outcome. Part of it is knowing that you can have all of these little process goals and appreciating each one along the way, and those will get you to the outcome goal. But if you're so obsessed about the outcome the whole time, then you can't stop and appreciate all of the little process goals and little achievements that you're constantly having. Like you're constantly getting little wins and little victories and little successes along the way. But when you're constantly obsessed about the fact that you're not there yet, when you're looking off into the distance, instead of stopping and appreciating where you are right now, today, then you're missing the point, aren't you? And so the other part of this relates really strongly to our creative pursuits, and anybody who has a creative business, a small business, maybe you have your own platform, or you're an artist, or you're a creator. You really like sharing content, and it doesn't have to be you're some kind of a holistic practitioner or anything. Maybe you like to share your art or something. A big part of it is knowing that the journey is in the journey. It's not the peak that you're going to get to when you're done the hike. It's appreciating and stopping and smelling the flowers in the middle of the journey, in the middle of the hike, and knowing that there is beauty in the whole trail. There's beauty in the fun little pictures that you're going to take along the way, and the mushrooms that you found on the bottom of the stump that was keeled over, because nature just paints little pictures along the way. There is beauty in finding yourself in the process. Just like when you're posting content as a creator, as a platform person who has your own little creative, spiritual business, whatever it might be, there is beauty in just doing it as a creative expression of who you are, instead of doing it for the likes, or posting each video and then being bummed out when it didn't get very many likes, or going back and checking to see if you got any comments. Like, just let yourself be okay with putting out that expression of who you are and moving on to the next one. It's like being okay with being in the middle of the journey and knowing that it's going to be a while. It's going to be figuratively hours before you reach the peak of the mountain that you're traversing or hiking up. But there's going to be loads of little nuggets of gold along the way. So, as with everything else, take with that what resonates, leave what doesn't. And I'll get to sharing more on Raido, as well as the pose for that runic posture later in the week. So I'll have another video on Raido as a whole video about the rune, and a little bit more on runic yoga for Raido later this week. And other than that, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and I'll see you soon. Bye.